to think about how walking through that museum was a reminder for me of my own proximity to this history, that my grandfather's grandfather was enslaved, right? So when my 3-year-old son sits on my grandfather's lap, I imagine my grandfather sitting on his grandfather's lap. And I'm reminded how this history that we tell ourselves was so long ago was in fact not that long ago at all. And that the sort of emotional and linear proximity we have to that period of time was just yesterday in the scope of history.
What's going on, book friends? Welcome back to yet another episode of Between Two Succulents. I'm Brandon Rashad Butts, your friendly neighborhood bookseller. And guys, I'm trying to be as cool and chill as I can, but the truth is that I'm very geeked about our guest that we have for us today. So I'm not going to hold us up too much. Let me go ahead and introduce him. He is a staff member at The Atlantic. He is the author of the poetry collection Counting Descent, which won the 2017 Literary Award for Best Poetry Book from the Black Caucus of American Library Association, and was a finalist for the NAACP Image Award. He is also the host of the YouTube series Crash Course Black American History. He has received his BA in English from Davidson College, but has a PhD in education from Harvard University. Guys, please help me welcome to the show the good doctor, Mr. Clint Smith. Clint, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us.
I'm happy to be here. I only wish we could do it in person.
Yeah, me too. But hey, put that in the universe. It's going to come. All right. So, guys, today we'll be talking with Clint about his recently released narrative nonfiction debut work that is called How the Word is Passed, a reckoning with history of slavery across America, which is currently a #1 New York Times bestseller. You might have heard of Clint from his TED Talks or as a writer for one of my personal favorite magazines, The Atlantic. But today we're going to get to know him just a little bit more through this conversation. And you guys know how we do. We kick things off with our favorite segment around here that we like to call Aw Sucks. So today, Clint, I'm going to introduce you to 2 of our succulent VIPs, and you're going to pick one, and that one is going to be the one that you feel would probably best heal this problematic American soil. Clint, are you ready to go?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. So first, we have the beautiful Haworthia limifolia, or the fairy's washboard. This succulent is charming, and compact. These unusual plants rarely exceed 4 inches tall in a potted container, making it the perfect addition to a windowsill or desk. Native to South America, Fairy's washboard features a rosette of triangular leaves with distinct ridges. These distinct ridges resemble the texture of a washboard, giving it the common name Fairy's washboard. And then right after that, we have our second succulent of the day, the pincushion peperomia. The peperomia is a small semi-succulent perennial species native to Peru and the rainforests of South America. Other names include the happy green bean or the green bean peperomia. The pincushion peperomia grows to up to 12 inches tall and features narrow, slender, and juicy lime green leaves, which are pea-pod shaped. It likes bright, indirect sunlight and humidity, but it cannot tolerate sunlight or full sun. So today would not be the best day for this particular plant. So, Clint, which one do you pick? The fairy's washboard or the happy green bean plant?
So the happy green bean plant drew me in because its name is peperomia.
Yep.
The peperomia, which sounds like pepperoni, which sounds like pepperoni pizza, which sounds delicious. I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and what brings our family together when people are throwing tantrums, when people are fed up, is pepperoni pizza. And so I think that if pepperoni pizza can bring my family together through thick and thin, then maybe the peperomia can bring America together in the midst of the tantrums being thrown across this country.
Look at us, solving and healing the world through plants and pizza. What could be better? Honestly, that's a great choice. All right, thanks for playing with us today, Clint. So let's just, dive in truly head first into this book. Now, first off, I have to thank you for truly creating a work that, in my opinion, demands the reader to come to terms with the proven nature of this land that we call the land of the free and the home of the brave. I mean, today there's just tons of discourse around what to do with these particular moments in history, um, especially the ones that we choose to idolize, for lack of a better phrase. For instance, the Robert E. Lee monuments. I know that in your hometown of New Orleans, back in 2017, the major monument there was removed. In my hometown of Richmond, Virginia, it's in process of being removed. Still not quite soon enough, but it's in motion. So my first question would be, what would you say causes people to have the desire to hold on to these truly toxic moments and representations of dangerous parts of our history? What is that? What is that opposition? Where does it come from?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for some people, history is not about historical evidence or about empirical fact or about what is in primary source documents. It is about a story they have been told, and it is about a story that they tell, and it is an heirloom that is passed down across generations. And when you are told a story that allows you to situate yourself in the story of American history in a way that gives you a sense of purpose and identity and value, when somebody tells you that that story is wrong, it not only is you having to accept that something you've been taught is wrong, it's this idea that who you believe yourself to be in the world is also wrong, right? It becomes existential for a lot of folks. I spoke to folks when I was at in the Blandford Cemetery, one of the largest Confederate cemeteries in the country, with the Sons of Confederate Veterans, and it became clear that so much of who they understood themselves to be in the world was shaped by stories that they were told by like their granddad, sitting on in the gazebo watching the deer walk through the tombstones and singing Dixie songs and hearing stories about the great Confederate soldiers who were brave and tried to protect their culture and their society from Northern aggression. These are the stories that folks are told growing up, and so for me to tell you that that is wrong, and that the monuments that they put up in honor of that time period is wrong, and is actually predicated on maintaining and expanding the institution of slavery, then calls into question everything you thought you believed about who you were and who your family was and who America was.
Yeah, for lack of a better phrase, maybe motif of oral history or oral tradition, passing on of story of, that connects to the African diaspora through like the lens of like the griot and then beyond that. But I don't think many consider the fact that, that's not just how we tell our oral history through a lack of, access to documents or actual tangible representation or what have you. This is something that a lot of people do and use as a way of like passing on. And like you said, it's a sort of heirloom. I think that was a very significant point that you hit there in reference to the question. But yes, good. So just to keep things moving, you wrote in the book that someone shared with you that in reference to New Orleans, that the whole city is a memorial to slavery. Now that really resonated with me, being growing up in Richmond. I knew that I could feel the presence of Black lives, enslaved or otherwise, and how they suffered under the largest domestic slave market in the Old South, and then the subsequent gentrification that essentially engulfs my hometown every single day. Every time I go home, something is brand new, like something is just changed or different. Could you speak a little bit to your personal experience about doing the research back in New Orleans? And, how was it having to be so precise and sort of confrontational, if you will, with your own hometown? And did it change your perspective of your hometown, if at all?
Yeah, I mean, the origin story of the book is that I was watching the statues in the same way I imagine you've watched the statues come down, or at least a couple of the statues come down in Richmond. I was watching the statues come down in New Orleans in 2017 and thinking about what it meant, watching the statue of Robert E. Lee, PGT Beauregard, Jefferson Davis, watching these statues come down and thinking about what it meant that I grew up in a city in which there were more homages to enslavers than there were to enslaved people. And that I had to go down Robert E. Lee Boulevard to get to school, that I had to go down Jefferson Davis Parkway to get to the grocery store, that my middle school was named after a leader of the Confederacy, that my parents still live on a street named after somebody who owned 150 enslaved people. Because we know that the thing about symbols and iconography and names of buildings is that they're not just names. They're not just symbols. They are reflective of the stories that people tell. And those stories shape the narratives that communities carry. And those narratives shape public policy. And public policy shapes the material conditions of people's lives, which isn't to say that taking down a 60-foot tall statue of Robert E. Lee is going to erase the racial wealth gap. Of course not. But it is to say that part of what we have to recognize is that all of these things are part of the same ecosystem of ideas and stories and narratives that shape how we understand who this country is, who it has been, and how we can make it what we want it to be moving forward. And so, yeah, I had to tackle the ways in which New Orleans was reckoning with that history and the ways that New Orleans was failing to. And I think starting there allowed me to think more critically about these different places across the whole country.
Yeah, no, and and not to belabor, but the fact that I wanted to shout out also, I think the importance and the appreciation behind you acknowledging in the introduction the importance that we're discussing the antebellum South or the old South, for lack of a better phrase, but there was an entire history of people that is often left out or wiped out away from the true American history, which are those who are indigenous to our land that we inhabit now. Because as you said, there's a Jefferson Davis Highway at your home. There's a Jefferson Davis back home. We have a Poe White Parkway. Well, we call it Poe White, but technically Powell Height, I guess. There's Powhatan. There's just so much representative of the indigenous people, but then how it was colonized by the Confederates in a way. Like, it is truly just sweeping the land, and that is that one, like, that introduction to the entire book, I had to stop and walk away for a second because I was like, doggone, that is so true. My hometown is like a memorial to all of this mess too. And it's just, I think that was a beautiful way to take us into your book, as well as an honorable mention to those who truly deserve much more acknowledgement and representation. But yes, thank you so much for all of your words that you've shared with us thus far. You've written a book that truly reveals and discusses a lot of hard truths that I feel like a lot of us struggle to come to terms with, but you bring them right to the reader's forefront. So honestly, I think that you'll fare quite well in our next segment that we like to call our lightning round. Right. So I'll ask you 3 questions in this next portion, and if you answer them correctly, then one of our lucky viewers on the StreamYard will win the prize of all prizes, a free copy of your book, How the Word is Passed. What? Clint, are you ready to play the lightning round?
I'm ready. The graphics are here. I'm feeling the vibes.
Yeah. We're good for a graphic around here. Let's go. Let's go. So good. So question number 1. What would you say is probably the most prominent lesson that you learned during your research of this book?
So much of the book was written with the intention of trying to help us understand our physical proximity to this period, to this history in this period of time, and how the scars of slavery are etched across the landscape of this country. But part of what I realized while writing it was I gained a better and more intimate sense of our temporal proximity to this history, that this history we tell ourselves was a long time ago wasn't that long ago at all, that the woman who opened the National Museum of African American History and Culture in DC in 2016 was the daughter of an enslaved person, right? Like, she rang that bell alongside the Obama family in 2016, and she was the daughter of someone born into intergenerational chattel slavery. And I think all these different places that I went gave me a more visceral sense of how this story that we tell ourselves was a long time ago wasn't actually that long ago at all.
So true. So true. Thank you. All right. Question number 2. What are some of the places you mentioned in the book? Again, like in the early parts of it, that there are a lot of places that you researched that you visited and that you took notes of and so forth. What are some of the places that you visited that didn't quite get highlighted in the book?
Yeah, I had a whole section on plantation weddings, and so I went to all these different plantations where people hold weddings, and I was trying to understand how someone decides to celebrate one of the most joyous days of their lives on a site of intergenerational torture and exploitation. And like, I talked to wedding planners who told me about people who held, who used these former slave cabins as bridal suites for some of their weddings. And so I had a whole thing about that that didn't end up making it in the book, but that was, but it was. I wish in some ways that it had. I ended up publishing some of it in a piece for BuzzFeed a few weeks ago, but yeah, I went to a couple of places where they hold plantation weddings, and that was wild.
Yeah, no, I know this is a lightning round, but I got to share this. Back in 2016, after the Charleston 9 massacre, I was blessed to work with a local, well, not a local, but a regional theater company here in Baltimore, Center Stage. And we worked on this project called My America 2. And we went, long story short, we created these pieces that we performed and shot on the locations of various deaths of Black lives. So we went to Ferguson and shot a scene at the site of Mike Brown, Florida for Trayvon Martin, and for 4 other places, including Charleston. And it was truly disturbing to go to a double funeral because they had to do more than one funeral most of the time. And then literally right down the street, like spitting distance, a massive park. People are throwing frisbees, playing with dogs in those big plastic orbs that you get in and you're supposed to run around in on the inside or whatever down the hill. It was just the comparison of the two was so disturbing. It was just wild how something like that, how those two lives could live so close to each other. Like, I mean, 20 steps from each other. I just, that just resonated me, what you just said. But, wow. So moving on to question number 3. A saying that we have all heard is that know your history or you're bound to repeat it. Do you believe that there's stock in preserving these historic moments for education's sake, or regardless of personal opinion and preferences?
In terms of the monuments, I mean, I think that people of good faith can have different conceptions of like what should happen to a statue of Jefferson or Lincoln or Grant or a host of people, right? I think people of good faith can have rigorous discussions about the pros and cons of that. For me, the Confederate monuments specifically are kind of like the low-hanging fruit of this debate. Like, there is no reason that you should have monuments on public spaces paid for by taxpayer dollars to people who led an army that was predicated on maintaining and expanding the institution of slavery and seceded from the Union, committed treason to do it, right? Like, there is no context in which that is that makes any sense. It's just on its face absurd. And so I don't buy the idea that like we should put up a plaque on the statue of Robert E. Lee, or that we should recontextualize it. I mean,
yeah.
For me, I would take them down. I would take them all the Confederate statues down. The one thing I'm sympathetic to is like what's happened in Richmond is kind of amazing. The way that it has been, that statue that's supposed to be coming down soon has been turned into this space that has been reclaimed by Black folks in Richmond as this space that serves as a microcosm of a sort of larger reclamation of history. And all the graffiti and art surrounding that statue has been pretty remarkable. So ultimately, I think they should, in 99% of cases, just all come down. But I'm also sympathetic to the idea that local communities should be the ones who are deciding most of the stuff.
Yeah. Whew, and that is when you say local about Richmond, that's a dangerous community, honestly. But yeah, you are right, though. You are right. And I have a bonus question for you. What advice would you give to everyday citizens who want to change their hometown's narrative regarding race relations and history, but don't quite know how or like what actionable steps they can take?
I mean, part of what I think we've seen in Charlottesville, in Richmond, in New Orleans is that it only takes a few people to sort of build and create the momentum to make real change. I mean, obviously folks in Charlottesville, there have been Black activists in Charlottesville trying to get that statue taken down for decades. But most recently, it was, I think, a young woman, a young Black woman, who started a petition that just gained a lot of traction, and then ultimately led to the city council, I believe, voting for that statue to come down. So, there is an opportunity to build coalitions around these sorts of things that can gain a lot of momentum, gain a lot of traction, and you should never doubt the ability for you to serve as catalysts to helping a larger and wider group of people recalibrate and reimagine what their community and the landscape of their community should look like.
And with that, everyone, the Dr. Clint Smith is our lightning round champion.
Yeah, Clint! All right!
Thank you for playing. Joe, who is our lucky winner today?
Brandon, it is a great honor of mine to say that Dr. Tanya Pettiford-Waits, who is in Richmond, Virginia right now, is the winner of Clint's book. Dr. T, we'll get that in the mail for you.
Dr. T, you are absolutely a champion of your own. She is also another writer who we're going to have to talk to soon. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for raising Joe and I. We love you. We're going to send you that copy of your book. Clint, thanks a lot for chatting with us today. We really I'm so amazed that you said yes, and I'm so appreciative personally. I wanted to ask you, what's next for you? Are we working on the next novel? Are we taking a trip to the Bahamas? What's next?
Man, I'm trying to take a break. I've been running on fumes. I got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I love them. I'm also very tired, and I never expected to be quarantined with them for a year and a half. So grandma and grandpa are coming up, and my wife and I, as long as this Delta variant doesn't act up too much, are supposed to be going on a nice extended vacation. So keep your fingers crossed for us.
Absolutely. Double cross. Thank you. So are there any, before we let you go, are there any organizations or causes that you wanted to take a moment to shout out?
I've been thinking a lot about the Center for Fair Sentencing in Youth, which is an organization in DC that is attempting to get rid of all laws that make, they are attempting to get rid of mandatory life without parole for children. And that's what I wrote my dissertation on for graduate school. And they just do incredible work. It's the Campaign for Fair Sentencing of Youth, CFSY. Yeah, they do amazing work. Please look them up.
Absolutely. Everyone, please check them out. Clint is the amazing author who put in front of us a journey that is cause of understanding and coming to terms with the problematic history of America's South in his new nonfiction narrative work, How the Word is Passed, a reckoning with the history of slavery across America. You can pick it up right here at Charm City Books. Please stop by and see us and visit us. Clint, thank you again for taking the time to sit and chat with us.
It's been so fun. Thank you all so much.
And thank you all for joining us and braving the wilds of this heat and social media. Please stay hydrated, get vaccinated because the Delta variant is around. Stay masked up, everyone. Wash your hands. It's not over yet. Please keep in and keep fighting the good fight against this crazy thing. And we hope to see you soon right here at Charm City Books. Thank you, guys. See you next week.
Okay, and we